I know a lot of
I'm gonna try to do it.
Yeah.
I got some.
She's like, short and sweet.
I'm just taking my time. It's the first big one.
Nobody's
Yeah, I mean, the last I heard was November 3rd, 4 days ago. And he said he'd been out for- Well, it'll be fine. Yeah, he's still in.
Sarah.
No?
Yes, miss. Candy, yeah.
So. Yeah. What's up, Chuck? It is 6:15 to call this board meeting to order. We have a quorum of the board present. If you'll please stand, remove your hats, and let's say the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, we have in times past, whenever part of the administration loses a member, started the board meetings off with a moment of silence, so I would like to do that in honor tonight of our district superintendent's nephew who recently passed away. We would have a moment of silence in his honor and for Mrs. Oginski. Just like to say on behalf of the board, our condolences to your family. We will have roll call.
Piper Dave Bardot.
Here.
Rod. Nelson. Here. Kristen Matt Miller. Andy Mary.
Yes.
Angie Schreiber. Here. Eddie Schrader. Catherine Solon. Here. Danny Pyle.
Here. Item 2, citizens and delegation. Letter A, we will have recognition first. Mrs. Oginski.
Okay, the first person we would like to recognize is Mr. Austin Keppel. He received the 2023 Melvin Pointis Creative Sparks in Music Education Award on October 25th for his efforts with the Northwoods Marching Band that marched in the 23 Tournament of Roses Parade on January 2nd in Pasadena, California. This award is given out to a music educator recognized from the Wisconsin Music Education Association for imaginative, creative, and innovative teaching practices in music education. He worked extremely hard for 2 years in preparation for the parade. There were 53 Antigo High School band students and a total of 400 band students in the Northwoods Marching Band. How amazing for Mr. Keppel, and he is not present, so we'll give a round of applause for him. certificate of recognition. At this time, we would also like to recognize there was a group effort made for making the Skills USA Day a success at Antigo High School. Mr. Mike Parizic, Mr. Jeremy Doucette, and Ms. Shaylin Domke focused on all of the event coordination and organization. They had all the behind-the-scenes things taken care of and even worked on the weekends to ensure everything was ready to go. So at this time, we would like to recognize Mr. Parizic, Mr. Doucette, and Mrs. Domke. Please come forward. And I'll get your picture over here against the wall.
Thank you. Thank you for all of your.
Okay, 1, 2, 3. Cheese. 1, 2, 3. Thank you. And next, we would like to recognize Mr. Ray Churchill for putting together the automotive and small engine contest, Ms. Tracy Frisch for organizing the culinary and baking contest, Mr. Dave Poor for organizing the drafting contest for Skills USA, and Mr. Justin Gravitter for organizing the CO2 contest for Skills USA. Please come forward and receive your recognition. Okay, ready? 1, 2, 3, cheese. 1, 2, 3, cheese. Good. Thank you.
This recognition is something that the board will be doing on a monthly basis for staff and students that have excelled in some area around the district or around the community. So be prepared to see this each and every month. Letter B, Skills USA. Mr. Parizic, if you want to come up.
Presentation. So the first event that we're going to share out here is our Build the Future event that was held at the Los Area Builders Association. And I have two students that went on that trip that are going to talk about that experience and what that was about. There's a few pictures that are in the slideshow up on the screen, so I'll let them talk about that whole experience, and then we'll get into the Skills USA stuff.
I'm Mitchell Hotchkiss. I'm a senior at the Antigo High School, and we went on this field trip for the trades, and there was a lot of many different job opportunities that were there. They let all the kids drive wheel loaders, excavators, install flooring, decking, siding, roofing, and that was only half of the jobs that were there. And I just want to thank Mr. Parizic because we would not have been able to go if it wasn't for him. And he signed us up to go. He drove our bus there and back. And that's just one of the opportunities that Mr. Parizic has given me. And this was a great field trip because it opens up a different pathway for my career that I want to get into.
I really enjoyed this field trip because there's just so many different things and so many different hands-on things that you could do, like do siding, build wood things, and drive different things. There's just so many different things to see, and there was cars and motors and everything. There's just such a variety of like things you could do to expand your career and see what you want to go into.
Could you tell us your name and grade, please?
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
I'm Petra 4.
So that event was hosted by the Wasser area Field that they do every year. All the field trips that I've taken students on over the years, all the activities that we've done, this is probably the most engaging activity that I've been at in all the years I've been in education. Everything was hands-on, engaging the entire day, and that's what the kids really loved about the trip. So it was an awesome experience. Any questions on that event? All right. So I'll have you go back to slide 2. Oh, sorry. You're good. All right, so Skills USA District 3 Regional Competition, that was an event that we held here on November 13th, and it was our professional development day, and we had the entire Antigo School District staff involved in judging and supporting the event in some way, shape, or form. We had over 200 students from area high schools across the state of Wisconsin, from Germantown to Florence, all over the place, 15 different schools, and we offered 29 different events. So according to the state, that is the biggest event in the state of Wisconsin for Skills USA, minus the state conference itself. So it was a pretty awesome event, and we had lots of good feedback, a lot of positive things about the event. And I'll let Jeremy and Shalyn talk a little bit more about the logistics of that, and you can go to the next slide.
Hello, I am Jeremy Doucette, graphic design teacher here at the high school. I think the biggest thing that I took away from this particular event is all the feedback that we've received from our own staff, from the staff of other schools, and how complimentary they were of both the event itself and of our students, and of, in particular, the behavior of all of the students that were around the building and how serious they were about their competitions and how they were representing our school and their schools.
Hi, I'm Shalyn Donkey. I'm the agriculture teacher here at the Antigo High School. So just to kind of reference, yes, it was a great event. There was a lot of people here. Some of you popped in and seen, Jeremy and I were in our little command zone, and it went very well. I have to say Mr. Parizek and Mr. Doucette did a very nice job with all the logistics in the background. We just want to say a special thank you to all of our sponsors, Sawmill Surplus, Fleet Farm, Krieger Steinfest, NTC, Sartori, Northwoods Blooms, North Star Lanes, All Star Stuff, and Volks Auto. The cool thing is we fed the students. All students were fed and advisors, and they were fed by North Star Lanes. And then all of the judges and volunteers were fed by All Star Stuff. So it was just a great event to have. I have to say my little fun thing, because I told them after the recognition, my favorite part of the whole thing is Mr. Rogers let us have the headsets, and that was like the coolest thing in the world. So, but it was a great event, and it was great that we were hosting it.
All right, maybe we'll go to the next slide. So, as you can see, we've been very busy in the CTE department. On November 16th, we held the career fair and transition fair here at the high school. We had 49 businesses set up in different booths in the field house for grades 9 through 12. The juniors and seniors participated in a panel discussion in the morning with 20 area businesses. Mr. Gums's English class had a lot of questions prepped for that question and answer session. A lot of good feedback from that as well. And I'll let Mrs. Donkey add to that as well.
A little bit about that. So that was Jeremy Doucette and I were doing a lot of the logistics. This is one of my favorite events that we host, just because we bring in a wide variety. And this year we We invited over 150 businesses, not just from Langley County, but from all over northern and central Wisconsin. We did get feedback from some people that, is this the date that you're always having? Let us know, because that would work out for their schedule for next year. So having that conversation and putting that in. The cool thing about that is we also hosted White Lake and Bowler. White Lake and Bowler also came. Elko had a last minute cancellation, but we have schools from around the area that also come. The businesses had great feedback for us. We are looking at making a few adjustments. We took their feedback last year and made adjustments, and so we're just continuing to make it better, and we're hoping that eventually we can expand to the Commons and have a really awesome event for our students.
You can go to the next slide. You actually want.
Yeah, we've been busy, as Jeremy and I have said when we first started before the first event, how we were going to pull off something in a month. They all are a month apart, so it's been quite the busy time for us. So we decided we're having the Where's Greenhouse grand reopening and rededication. Also, our CTE open house is going to be held on Thursday, December 14th from
4 to 8.
Thank you, 4 to 8 p.m. My mind is going to the reopening. And then we're going to have a rededication ceremony for the greenhouse at 6 p.m. We're going to start in the Vaughan because we're anticipating a lot of attendance, and then we will go to the greenhouse and do ribbon cutting. So we're excited to share all of the new technology that we're going to have. And then we're also having all of our CTE areas. So all 10 CTE areas will be open for the public to come and visit. We've been doing a lot of advertising and trying to get information out to everyone in the community and beyond the community to bring in a large amount for this.
One of the things that we're really focusing on is telling our story as a CTE department, what we can do, what we do with the community, what we've done historically in the past, as well as the types of things that we can offer the community in partnership with different businesses and individuals. So there will be displays throughout the event kind of telling that story, how we work with community organizations, industry partners, businesses, and other departments within the district itself. As well as testimonials from alumni, current students, community organizations that we work with. We're also bringing in a number of different industry partner booths so that they can both show off their business and how we work with them. There'll be some fundraising opportunities, food down in the Commons, some custom takeaways that guests can make as they're walking around to each department. And as was already mentioned, there's a pretty aggressive marketing plan already in place right now. So you'll see all kinds of posters and table tents and ads and stuff popping up all over the place, as well as news stories that will be coming up in the next couple of weeks as well.
I don't think so. Any questions?
Thank you very much.
Yeah, just a thank you. I think
Keep
this
up
is
all
all
the
great
work.
stuff for our community.
Okay, since Mr. Capel has come into the room, we will now go back to that item.
So at this time, we would like to recognize Mr. Austin Keppel. He received the 23 Melvin Pontius Creative Sparks in Music Education Award on October 25th for his efforts with the Northwoods Marching Band that marched in the 23 Tournament of Roses Parade on January 2nd in Pasadena, California. This award is given out to a music educator recognized from the Wisconsin Music Education Association for imaginative, creative, and innovative teaching practices in music education. He worked extremely hard for 2 years in preparation for the parade. There were 53 Antigo High School band students and a total of 400 band students in the Northwoods Marching Band. At this time, we would like to recognize Mr. Austin Keppel for his achievements. And we would like to get a photo, and then if you have some additional information you would like to share with us about the progression of the band program since COVID, that would be great.
Yeah, for sure.
Get your picture, please.
Yeah, for sure. Awesome. Congratulations.
Okay. Well, welcome. Well, I guess I'm a little bit late. That's not bad. But thank you for allowing me to come talk, and thank you for the recognition. I know I really appreciate it, but it's all because of these guys. So I just kind of stand there and wave my arms, and they do all the hard work. So, but I'm more than happy to talk to you a little bit about my journey here a little bit. So it's funny you mentioned talk about the experience post COVID, but like that's been my entire existence since post COVID. Was I started in 1920, and that was the year, right, that the world kind of exploded for a little bit. So my entire journey's been that. So like the seniors this year, 3 of them here tonight can kind of attest to that of what their journey has been. It's just been a roller coaster. It's been the outside rehearsals and chairs 6 feet apart. It's been inside of a tight gym, shoulder to shoulder with 400 people for the trip. It's everything in between, and it's been awesome. So specifically about the trip and the experience, though, I like I said, it was once in a lifetime. I still get choking up about it a little bit, and it's something that I don't know if these kids will ever get to experience again, which I feel really happy and proud about for them. They got to experience a lot of different things, just culturally going out to California, but like also with the experience of the parade was something really special. So we started my first year. I had a decent sized graduating class. I think it was like 8 or 9 or so. But then the 2 years afterwards kind of trickled on to 2 and 3 only. But last year we finished really strong with I had 18 seniors that graduated. 5 actually went into studying music in college as freshmen this year. I actually just went, Gabe Vitani was a senior last year, and he's doing music performance out at Eau Claire, and I went and saw his performance last weekend, so it was really fun to see him. But the program is growing, and it's all because of really great kids. So I think these guys, I told them to come and talk about the marching band a little bit, and some to talk about color guard specifically, because that's been a huge growth for us this year. So maybe Josie, if you want to go first with Tom and talk about the band.
So our music this year was pretty challenging, but I think we all stepped up to the challenge and we all grew from it. It ended up being a really great season with that.
Yeah, I started marching band in 8th grade, and I was part of Capital's first marching band directing experience. And I mean, I wasn't in it before, but I have heard other things from siblings and friends about how the program used to be. And I remember starting with my first year, we had a very small group, and we actually only had like 4 color guard, but then the next year we didn't have any. And so we didn't compete for an actual score for the longest time. And it was really weird to go from that non-competitive state to what we did this year, but I'm really proud that we did, and I think that it went really well for our first year back. And overall, the marching band experience is a lot smoother, and I have a lot less questions, and it feels like we move a lot faster through everything, because I remember it felt like we would never stop. Felt like we would never stop rehearsing just a couple parts in our first show, but then this year everything seemed really nice and continuous. So I think that in general, everything is very steadily and very nicely improving.
Yeah, going off of the growth, like I started 3 years ago and we had very low numbers, and now this year, percussion-wise, we had more percussionists than we knew what to do with. So we have definitely gotten our numbers way back up and had some serious growth.
Yeah, thanks guys.
Tommy was also the drum major this year too.
Yes, I was.
Yeah. Okay, you want to talk about color?
I've been wanting to do a color guard since I started marching band. My brother Michael, he was in color guard for a year. So when I was in like 8th or 9th grade, I was like, is there gonna be color guard? Because I knew there wasn't. And then this year, it opened up, and I was super excited, and I'm very proud at how well we did. We got 6 out of 29, like, in color guard. Was it at state?
Yeah.
At state. And, like, this was, with Mr. Capel, this was my, like, intro to marching band in general. Like, I didn't have anything before him or for that, but I'm very proud and I'm very glad that this was my first, like, experience with marching band and color guard. We did very well. I'm very proud of us.
6th place for color guard out of 29 bands across the state.
Yes,
I think that's
yeah.
very well.
So this is my first and only year of doing marching band since I'm a senior. And I'm just really happy that we had color guard as an option. Because in the summer, I didn't really know what to expect with it. And Capel really led us through as our color guard director because we didn't really have one until the end of the season. So I think a lot of our accomplishments are thanks to him because he would go from color guard to drumline to the pit to the entire band, put us on the field and try and make us march together. And dealing with us, all almost 50,
Yeah,
almost 50 of us all at once on one field is pretty impressive. So I think it's mostly thanks to him.
Yeah, I'll just kind of wrap it up here a little bit. So Matt kind of mentioned it about the 6th place. So we get put into a class. So we are a AA school in WSMA standards. So that 6th place wasn't out of the AA schools. That was across all the quad A schools, all the AAA schools. So we were scoring well against bigger schools with bigger numbers and more stuff. So again, it just goes to the work that they're doing. And I'm actually really proud of them too because we opened up we do the Christmas parade in the week. So I opened it up to non-band members to join color guard. I did not expect it to be this way, but we have 26 color guard members for the Christmas parade. I expected like 12. So the 7 of them that kind of spearheaded the whole experience kind of bloomed into something really awesome. So I'm really excited about that. Yeah, so.
Mr. Keppel, isn't it true when you go to this state that in past years, because you didn't have a color guard, you got no score basically in ranking. But now this year, because we had some people who came out to do the color guard, we actually got points and were placed.
Yeah. So that was the biggest thing. Matt was kind of the one that kind of speared me to it. Was he's been begging for it. So I taught myself color guard. I didn't have any color guard experience, so I taught myself through YouTube videos, as anybody does these days. But and then one of my friends is a color guard teacher, so he taught me some stuff too. So I taught myself color guard, and then I taught them color guard. So like Molly was saying a little bit, I kind of wore a lot of hats this year. But yeah, that's true. So the previous 2 years, I just didn't have a coach, so I didn't have a color guard, and then we finally had enough momentum towards a competitive state where I needed to do it. So then it just kind of happened. So yeah, we're really excited about that this year. So for sure. Anything else?
No, overall, thank you guys for presenting the cohesiveness from all of you and the mutual respect. It's very evident and it's really neat to see. You all did wonderful at speaking. What stood out is you each, between leader and student, are complimenting each other and putting the praise on somebody else, which just shows that mutual respect. And your outcomes show that. So thank you for coming tonight.
Yeah, thank you all. So
I had to travel with you all this season, by the way. My fall was very different.
yeah, for sure. Well, I'll see you next Wednesday. Don't you worry. All right. Thank you all.
Okay, letter C, student representative report, and we have Miss Lucy who is going to fly solo tonight.
I feel like I'm a little close. Oh, good evening. It's kind of a hard follow-up. I feel like we have a lot of exciting stuff going on. I'm just going to run through me and Ava's outline since she was unfortunately unable to make it tonight. But starting with the academics, we have something a little different this month. The Antigo High School Science Department is welcoming a prospective new physics teacher, Elise Incha. She was an AHS alum, and that's kind of all we really have in there, but it's very exciting. I'm in physics, so I'm excited. In the field trips category, Ms. Fisher's annual sports entertainment marketing trip to Lambeau Field is this Thursday. I'm in that class, and so I'm also excited for that. And it'll hopefully be a successful tour. She has it every year for I don't even know how many years, but a long time. And it's one of her favorite things in the world, so it's really exciting to be around her and like have her share that with us. FFA recently attended the National FFA Mission and Impact Leadership Conference in Green Bay with 14 students, and they had a great 2-day trip, so that was also really exciting. Special events, Captain Poultry Week we just recently had, and we donated approximately 600 pounds of food. We capped the week off with some good fun at the school assembly, and several teachers were pied as celebration for the food donated. And then the CTE department had mentioned it, but on November 16th, students had the opportunity to participate in the career fair, where we were able to speak to community members about various careers and job opportunities after high school. And from a student perspective, it's really interesting, honestly, to see the different opportunities that are like around our community, because a lot of kids don't realize that until there's people there talking to you about what you could do here after high school, and it's really cool. Looking ahead, hunting season, of course. We're waiting to announce the winner of the AHS Big Buck Contest. Students and staff have until 3 o'clock tomorrow to get their pictures in to win. I'm not a hunter, but I don't know if any of you are. You could win if you wanted. Sports and clubs, winter sports are in full swing, including boys hockey, girls and boys basketball, wrestling, gymnastics, and boys swim. They love to have community members at their events, so if you want to stay tuned, there's lots of home games for different things every week. I think I was looking at it, and I'm pretty sure there's some kind of home game or event like every week of the next 4 months for winter sports, so that's cool. And then this Friday is the boys and girls rivalry doubleheader games away at Rhinelander, with the girls varsity playing at 6 p.m. and the boys varsity following at 8 p.m. So that's a really big, exciting event for students, and hopefully some community members can travel to Rhinelander to see that. Any questions? Okay.
Thank you, Lucy. You did a great job.
Thank you.
Okay, next on the agenda is letter D, the public comment. I will read this prior to announcing the two who signed up. And that is to permit fair and orderly public expression. The board shall provide a period for public participation at every regular meeting of the board and publish rules to govern such participation in board meetings. The presiding officer of each board meeting at which public participation is permitted shall administer the rules of the board for its conduct. The presiding officer shall be guided by the following rules. A. Public participation shall be permitted before the board takes official action on any issue of substance. B. Attendees must register their intention to participate in the public portion of the meeting upon their arrival at the meeting. C. Participants must be recognized by the presiding officer and will be requested to preface their comments by an announcement of their name and group affiliation if and when appropriate. D. Each statement made by a participant shall be limited to 5 minutes duration. Dustin will have a time clock on the screen. Letter E. No participant may speak more than once on the same topic unless all others who wish to speak on that topic have been heard. F. Participants shall direct all comments to the board and not to staff or other participants. G, all statements shall be directed to the presiding officer. No person may address or question board members individually. H, the presiding officer may interrupt, warn, or terminate a participant's statement when the statement is too lengthy, personally directed, abusive, obscene, or irrelevant. B, request any individual to leave the meeting when that person does not observe reasonable decorum. C, request the assistance of law enforcement officers in the removal of a disorderly person when that person's conduct interferes with the orderly progress of the meeting. D, call for a recess or an adjournment to another time when the lack of public decorum so interferes with the orderly conduct of the meeting as to warrant such action. And J, the portion of the meeting during which the participation of the public is invited shall be limited to 60 minutes unless extended by a vote of the board. Those are the rules that will govern our public comment section. And first of all, we have Glenn Siegman.
Hello, Glenn Sigmund. CB's probably speak here before. This one will be a little tamer, I promise. Tonight, I would like to address tonight's agenda item 6F, the proposed changes to public participation at board meetings. I'll go through each of the proposed changes and provide some concerns about each of them. The first is the addition of an item that includes language to restrict comments made by the public, requiring them to be civil in content and tone, and to not disparage school board members or other employees of the district. I'd first like to say that I'm not a lawyer, but this very much sounds like a violation of the First Amendment to me. I'd like to quote an article from the National School Board Association on matters regarding the First Amendment. I quote, "School boards must be extremely cautious about restricting what citizens say during the period set aside for public comments at school board meetings. Generally, if a school board is going to allow for public comment, which is not constitutionally required, it must allow the public to speak about any matter within the school board's authority. To curtail this, school boards can adapt policies that restrict the length of a person's statements, prohibit someone from repeating the same comments at multiple meetings, or limit the amount of time for public comment at the meeting as a whole. Any such policies, however, must be consistently enforced on a content-neutral basis." I'm also curious about who gets to decide what constitutes civil content or tone. If it's the school board members who are being criticized themselves, that seems like quite a conflict of interest. It's quite subjective and an easy way for them to shut down any criticism they don't want to hear or deal with. The next item I'd like to address is the reduction in time for public comment, both in its entirety and per speaker. The board is proposing a 75% reduction in total public comment time from 60 minutes down to 15 minutes, and allowing each speaker an allotted time of 3 minutes, which is a 40% reduction in time. I'd like everyone to know that this was proposed by the district superintendent at the policy committee meeting on November 7th. I'd like to also quote the reason given for this time reduction. I quote, "When you're looking at allocating an hour of your board meeting to public comment, that can sometimes become very taxing on the amount of work that you're able to do. And our board meetings already happen at night when all of us have already fulfilled a day of work and other obligations that we have." End quote. I don't seem to recall y'all taking the rest of the community's full days of work and obligations into consideration when you voted to end live streaming and most recording of your board and committee meetings. Also, many people that actually show up to these meetings do so when they have a serious concern that is important to them. It may not be illegal, but it is wrong to put additional burdens and limits on them when they do show up to voice their concerns, especially as most people are not professional speakers and may be nervous when giving their comments, which would slow them down. I'd also like to remind both the board members, Ms. Brown and Ms. Schreiber, that you both stated at the policy committee meeting that you were against these time limit changes, and I really hope you stay true to that when you vote tonight. The last item I'd like to address is the addition of the residency or property ownership requirement to speak at these board meetings. I can't possibly imagine what prompted that change, but somehow I don't think this particular school board is overly concerned about Moms for Liberty showing up. I would like you all to consider who you may be excluding by putting this requirement in place. First off, the majority of school funding comes from the state and federal governments, So you will be excluding many people who help fund the majority of this district. Second, Wisconsin is an open enrollment state, which means you could have students attending Antigo schools who have parents that wouldn't be allowed to present their concerns at these board meetings. Third, as far as I'm aware, it is not a requirement to live in the school district in order to be employed by the school district, which leaves potential staff the inability to publicly present their concerns. Anyhow, just to wrap up, it just so happens that I'm looking to buy some property here in Antigo. So if any of you are or know a good realtor, please put them in touch with me. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have an individual who signed up twice, so we'll just let him talk back to back. Jason Bohense, did I say that correctly?
Yes.
Thank you. And you can have the time for both of those back to back.
Okay. Good evening. My name is Jason Honesy, and I'm a lifelong Antigo resident, other than my years at the University of Wisconsin-Madison, where I attended college. I believe that eliminating athletic fees is one of the most cost-effective choices we can do to better our community. I was a multi-sport athlete in high school and know firsthand the advantages that sports can do for an individual. Personally, I don't think I could have ever paid for the University of Wisconsin if I didn't get paid to go there and wrestle. And that really helped my life entirely and allows me to have the free time to spend wrestling with kids today. Recently, Aspirus Langlade Hospital and the Langlade County Health Department released their community health needs assessment, and they had 3 top health priorities for Langlade County. The first one was substance abuse and mental health. The second one was chronic disease prevention and management. And the third one was access and affordability of healthcare services. I feel that reducing barriers and promoting participation in sports can help those first 2 points. In regards to substance abuse and mental health, the National Institutes of Health states, exercise improves mental health by reducing anxiety, depression, and negative mood, and by improving self-esteem and cognitive function. Exercise has also been found to alleviate symptoms such as low self-esteem and social withdrawal. For those athletes at the high school level, they also need to stay away from things like vaping, tobacco, alcohol, and other drugs to stay eligible to compete in their sports. On the point of chronic disease prevention and management, the Center for Disease Control states, regular physical activity helps improve your overall health, fitness, and quality of life. It also helps reduce your risk of chronic conditions like obesity, type 2 diabetes, heart disease, many types of cancer, depression and anxiety, and dementia. I could speak for hours on the benefits of sports for high school students. I only have 5 minutes up here. So let's look at what eliminating the athletic fee would do from a budget perspective. Per information from Kelly Fossbender, the Director of Business Services, the total amount of athletic fees for the 22-23 school year was $18,489. That breakdown was $18,105 for athletic fees, $224 for physical education locks, and $160 for user fees. That is but a drop in the bucket of the actual budget. Based on information in the 22-23 budget book, revenue for 21-22 was over $29.1 million. The estimate for 22-23 was $30.3 million. The audited financials for the 21-22 year had the revenue at $33.9 million. So again, $18,000 is a very, very small portion of that overall budget. The 22-23 budget book also mentions 3 priorities for the upcoming school year. Focus on our continuous improvement goals regarding student achievement and school conditions, address the social and emotional needs of our students, and continue implementing our curricular review cycle. Again, I feel that eliminating sports fees could help those first 2 points. As someone who helps out with the high school sports team, I see firsthand the effect coaches have in motivating students to finish their homework, get those F's up, and stay eligible for sports. Wrestling alone, we have a handful of kids that, if it wasn't for wrestling, would not be passing their classes. And unless they went to Wings, would not be graduating high school. And I'm sure every sport is like that. Finishing their homework, it leads to better grades, higher test scores, more understanding of the topics. And I also see the firsthand positive social and emotional benefits of sports. Multiple studies have found that higher physical activity levels are associated with greater academic achievement among students. A study by Fox, Anderson, Newmark, and Wall compared GPAs among 4,746 middle school and high school students. Their results show that for high school girls, Both physical activity and sports team participation were each independently associated with a higher GPA. For high school boys, sports team participation was independently associated with a higher GPA. Their conclusions were, regardless of whether academic success was related to the physical activity itself or to the participation on a sports team, findings indicated positive associations between physical activity involvement and academic achievement among students. The most recent district report card showed that 59.9% of our students are economically disadvantaged. Those students are the ones hurt most by having athletic fees. If we eliminate athletic fees, we will encourage students to try more sports. We will eliminate the embarrassment of not having the funds to participate in multiple seasons of sports. I can't think of a more cost-effective way of increasing our academic output than eliminating athletic fees.
Good job. Thank you. Go ahead and move on to the second one. Yep. Middle school.
Yep, so I feel that all middle school students, whether enrolled in our district or not, that reside within our county should be allowed to participate in middle school sports. This was allowed as recently as last year, but things seem to have changed this year. A recent look at the bottom of the Unified School District of Antigo website states that educating everyone takes everyone. The mission of the Unified School District of Antigo ensures high levels of learning for each and every student through high quality instruction. And the vision is every student and staff member experiences a sense of belonging and authentic supportive relationships. In partnership with our community, we commit to fostering student well-being and learning success. I think it is time for our school district to become a better partner with our community. Currently, there is no middle school boys swim team because of a lack of numbers, a situation that isn't helped by the fact that we don't allow all the members of our community who are of middle school age to join in middle school sports. I want our school district to be as inclusive as possible and to attract students instead of losing them. The Wisconsin Parental Choice Program is costing the Antigo School District over $1.1 million this year because 164 students have been open enrolled out of the Antigo High School District, or not the high school, the entire school district. I mentioned before the positives of encouraging sports to students, and I'm going to double down now and say that the district could save money by eliminating athletic fees and being more inclusive at the middle school level. If an athlete is allowed to make friends and be social with current students enrolled in our district, it is more likely that they decide to join our district in the future. If a student wants to participate in sports at the high school level, they have to enroll in our district. That is not a district decision, that is a WIAA decision. So they will have to make the choice when they hit high school, hey, I want to continue to be part of this team. If I want to continue to be one with my friends, I have to join this district. If as few of the 3 of the 164 students who left this district came back, we would have generated enough revenue to not only make up for all of the athletic fees we lost by not charging one, we'd have an additional $7,749. And that was based off of the $8,000 amount for 22-23. It goes up every year, so that would be even greater in the future. Even if the student is allowed to compete at the middle school level and they never enroll in our district, I feel like the benefits they receive from sports, both mentally and physically, are good for our community. We need more middle school age students spending time in the middle school gymnasium and less of them wandering the streets aimlessly after school. As with the high school, the middle school also has to keep their grades up. So if they want to be part of this, they have to do their work, they have to pass their classes, they have to go to school. I feel the goal of our public education is to make the community in a whole better in any way possible. And allowing these students to participate in middle school sports would be a good step. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Item number 3, consent agenda. Approval of agenda, minutes, and financial reports. Request for overnight travel, report of district retirements and resignations, and report of district new hires. I will be looking for a motion, please.
Move the board approve the agenda minutes from the October 16, 2023 Board of Education meeting, November committee meeting minutes, special Board of Education minutes dated 10/26/23 and 11/9/23, district retirement resignation report, report of district new hires, request for overnight travel, financial reports for October 2023, consideration of current bills, checks number 7359 through 7463, in the amount of $252,921.84. ACH is numbers 232400303 through 232400466 in the amount of $938,632.50, and wire transfers in the amount of $39,276.73 for a total of $1,230,831.07.
Motion has been made by Jill. Would you like to speak to your motion?
I would like to share my appreciation for the retirements of our district. Thank you for your service to our district for a large number of years.
Okay. Any other questions or discussion on the motion before you on the floor?
I have a question regarding the minutes for the special Board of Education meeting.
Move your mic just a little bit closer.
I have a question regarding the special Board of Education meeting minutes.
Okay, go ahead with your question.
So where it says action as a result of closed session, motion by Andy to approve superintendent performance evaluation. The following voted yes. Oh, I'm sorry, I was thinking of something else. My bad. I was thinking of something else.
Okay,
Sorry, I take it back.
Okay.
Sorry.
we will strike that question from the record. Any other questions or comments? Yes, ma'am, you want to speak to that mic there?
Minutes from the policy committee.
You want to bring your mic closer to you, Bobby, please?
The minutes from November 7th policy committee.
Yes, ma'am.
Public comment says no public comment, and I believe that there were public comment regarding the animal on district property.
Okay.
So those need to be added, and then I would also like to see the location of policy committee, building and grounds. All committee meetings should have a location noted in the official minutes.
So noted. So the policy committee meeting will be amended to include that there was public comment. That's what I was looking back in the book here for, to show that there was public comment, and then also will be noted where the meetings, all committee meetings take place, the location.
Right, time and location.
Sorry about the public comment. I don't know how I missed that one.
Thank you for catching that, Bobby. Anybody else have any comments or questions or suggestions? Hearing none, you have your voting devices. Make sure your name is on the back. The vote is now open to vote in favor of or against the motion that is on the floor that Jill made. You can vote.
Everybody up there is hard to see. Missing you.
Who we're missing? Missing me? There we go. Would anybody like to change their vote? All right, the vote is now closed. Dustin? And the motion carries. Item number 4, administrative reports. Director of Business Office and Mrs. Oginski will be giving these reports.
So these reports are presented or prepared and attached from each of the committee meetings. So the first one is from the Director of the Business Office, Mrs. Fossbender. She is present if anyone has questions. The second one is from the Director of Human Resources, Mrs. Verhagen. She is present if anyone has questions about her report. Item C, from the Director of Pupil Services and Special Education. Her report is attached, and Mrs. Burkhan is present if anyone has questions. Item D is from the Director of Curriculum and Instruction, and there are 2 items attached. One is a follow-up from the high school field trip that is placed on here just for information as a follow-up from a music trip that Mr. Oxley had proposed. So feel free to review that, and if you have questions, let us know. The other is the state report card presentation from November. This was not presented at the committee because the state report card was still under embargo, which means it could not be released to the public. So if you will look at your topic summary sheet, or Dustin, also if you can project the presentation, Ms. Stutzrim and I will go through this quickly. And I just want to let everyone know also that this will be, Ms. Stutzrim will prepare a very detailed presentation to be shared at the curriculum committee, so I encourage you to attend if you would like to know more about it. Also, there is a colored copy that has been placed at each of your seats if you would like to go through that as well. And we will start. Dustin, if you will go to the next slide. So if you will notice, there are 4 areas in which the state looks at for our determination of our school report card. Those are achievement, growth, target group outcomes, and on track to graduation. Slide 3 is a very good representation of the color-coded graph represents the old scoring scale that was used by the state of Wisconsin, and then they lowered those scores, and that is what you will see in the white box. And some of them there's a significant change in the amount of scoring for fails to meet or meeting expectations. And so those are provided just as a comparison for you to see how things have changed over the years. Slide number 4, this is the score summary for the district, and we have an overall score of 59.7, which means our district does meet expectations, which is an improvement from last year, which is always something to be celebrated. If you look at the pie chart over there, it shows you the exact amount of weighting that is used to come up with that score. And you will notice that growth is the largest percentage for the Antigo schools, and typically that's based on the amount of poverty that your school district has. So if you have a higher level of poverty, more of your weighting comes from growth, not so much from achievement. Not that achievement isn't important, it's very critical, but it's more the looking at growth. And then at the bottom you will see the target group outcomes and on track to graduation are equally weighted in the overall score. And if you look at slide 5, this shows you the priority area scores. And achievement, we got a 44.4, and that comes from English language arts and mathematics. The target group outcomes is a combination of achievement, growth, chronic absenteeism, and our graduation rate. And then if you look at growth, it also comes from English language arts and math. And if you look at both of those with achievement and growth, the dark bar is Antigo, and the lighter one, the 60.1, is the state of Wisconsin. It's just a comparison of how our district is performing in comparison to the state. And then on track to graduation is still the same. It's on the chronic absenteeism, the graduation rate. And if you look at this, you will see English language arts in 3rd grade counts twice. So it's critically important that we're doing really well with our 3rd grade scores, because it calculates in 2 separate areas of our school report card, along with 8th grade math. So those are big, heavy hitters. And I will stop talking and let Ms. Stutzrim finish.
Okay, thank you. So we're going to go over each one of those priority standards to make sure that everyone understands. Sometimes when we look at that overall score, if you're not like heavily into reading report cards, as many of us are not, it is, some people think it's just our scores from last year and you just get a score and that's what it is. But really there's a lot of different components that go into it. So one thing for this year, we're going to start with achievement. The priority area of achievement uses up to 3 years of data with more weight given to the most recent year. So when you're looking at that, it's not just last year's data, it's 3 years worth of data. For the first time since 1819 report cards, this data comes from 3 consecutive years. So this isn't new on how it's weighted and configured, but it is worth noting that the last 2 report cards that Antigo has had gaps in the 3 consecutive years due to the assessment not being given due to COVID during the 1920 school year. So this is the first report card that does not include any achievement data that occurred prior to the start of the COVID pandemic. This is the first report card. So nothing new on how we weighted, but just interesting fact that we have moved past those 3 years that are affected by that COVID year where we didn't take that forward assessment. So looking at the achievement, we are at 44.4. So when you look at that score, you're wondering how you get that. It's the last 3 years of test data, like I said, and they also use points-based proficiency. So if we go to the next slide, what you'll see here is kind of an overview of what that means. So it's not just how many students passed or didn't pass the forward assessment. What you're looking at is the 4 different parts of that assessment. So a student can take the assessment in ELA, math, science, social studies in different school years and get a below basic, which is the orange up there, basic, which is the yellow, proficient, which is the purple, and advanced, which is the blue. So when you're trying to figure the points-based proficiency rate, you're taking how many students, and each one is allocated a different point system. So below basic, you get 0 points. So if you score below basic on the ELA test in 3rd grade, you get 0 points onto our report card. If you get basic, which is that yellow, they take how many students received basic and times it by 0.5. If you are scored proficient, you take all those students that performed proficient and times it by 1. And the advanced, that smaller, like light blue part, they actually give you 1.5 for every student that performs advanced, which is why it's important to keep our students in their band and achieving at higher levels, because as students slip from maybe advanced to proficient, that hits heavy on the state report card. So everything is weighted a little bit different. We obviously want all of our kids advanced and making sure that we're making those goals. What they do then is take the total achievement points that they calculate, divided by the number of students that tested, and they get that points-based proficiency rate. So that's how they're coming up with the different point systems that go to achievement. So if we go on, you're going to see the data for this school year: English arts, language arts on the left, math on the right. It's calculated by different economic groups, by different race, by all different students with disabilities, students without disabilities, all different groups that we look at students. You'll see some have no graph next to them or bar. That's because we have fewer than 20 students in that category, so we didn't get any score for that. But as you look, you can see that our points change is going up, which is great, but there is still a lot of need and a lot of growth that we can make. Obviously, our students with disabilities in both ELA and math are at the lower end. That's a concern. Also, our students who are identified as English learners is another concern. So this is just great trend data that can help us as we make like district decisions, school decisions, and teacher decisions for the instruction of our students. This is the graph form for our district here at Antigo for the past 3 years. So what we want to see is we want to see that orange, that below basic, getting smaller. We want to see that light blue getting bigger. We want to see the purple obviously getting bigger, and that yellow, that basic score, which means we're not proficient yet, we just hit basic skills, shrinking and pushing them into the proficient. So as you can see in ELA, we are moving in the right direction. We still have a lot of growth needing to do, but we have made some growth there. And along with math, we're making bigger gains in the proficient and the advanced, which is a thing to celebrate. As we look at growth, so growth is the measurement of schools' contribution to student growth over time. What we are doing as educators and as a system to help build that growth in students. In Antigo, we're at 59.4. So what that means is when you take a student, let's say Nevaeh. Nevaeh is a student, and you look at her score from last year, you look at her score from this year, and you find the rate of growth. They take that growth, the state takes that growth and compares Nevaeh to students across the state with similar prior achievement, economic status, disability, EL, gender, migrant status, race, ethnicity. They try to find that student, and that is how they compare across the state. For each student, they do this. So that's why when we talk about the school report card, it's a little bit trickier than just saying we either passed or we didn't pass. As you look at that, you get a score range between 0 and 6, 3 being the score of average growth. So when we go to the next slide, and the next one, you're going to see that ELA is on the left, math is on the right. What this means is math, you can see all those in dark blue. We are over the average, 3.0 growth, which is state average. So we have made above the state average in growth for mathematics in all the groups that is identified there, except for proficient last year. You can see that one's at 2.8. What's significant is when you look at ELA, we have underperformed from the state because we're not making that 3.0 growth rate. We made about 2.1, 2.2 in that area. So that's one thing that does drive our decision making as we look at our ELA, especially in the elementaries and those foundational skills, which we've talked about before. But this is good data that backs up the reason we're putting some of those things into place, is that we're not making that growth. What we'd love to see is 6.0, which means we have significantly exceeded everyone else in the state across those bands of comparison. Our target group, so your target group is another one of those priority groups, is aimed at increasing achievement for historically underserved populations of students, and its focus is on attention on students who need the most support for continuous improvement. So what you do here to find your target group, and not every school is going to have a target group if you look through the school report cards, because remember they're taking the last 3 years. When you look at this, you're looking at the bottom 25%. So the bottom 25% of ELA, the bottom 25% of math, and if you go to the next slide, thank you, and then the lower ELA math bottom. And what they're doing is they're combining all those, the bottom 25% of each, and creating kind of like a school report card within a report card. So it's kind of this targeted group. The thing different this year is that the state usually allows us to see which students are identified in our targeted group. After this year, they are not going to do that anymore. So it's going to be up to us as a district to make sure we're tracking our students who need significant support and making sure we're doing that. So that's one of the changes that the state is making. But that's how you find your targeted group, so that we know which students are really far from that proficiency line and what we want to do to help support that. And here are our component scores. When you look through the different achievement, growth, chronic absenteeism, and graduation, remember we are the green line at the top, that's Antigo, and the bluish line underneath is the state. You'll see great things in our growth for ELA and math if we are above the state. For me, and I know that the Antigo School District does not just want to be above the state though, right? We want to be the best. What the significance is of this chart is the achievement part. Our targeted group is making 9.8, and this non-targeted group is making 56.7. That is a huge achievement gap between our targeted group, the ones we just talked about, the lowest 25%, and the rest of our student population. Again, in math as well. What that shows me and what that shows us is that our achievement scores, it's great to have growth, which is why we talked about we're going to look at growth, but we're also going to look at that proficiency line, because we can grow all we want, but we want our students to be succeeding, career and college ready to move on into the workforce, go to college, whatever their heart desires. So that's one thing we have to keep an eye on and make sure that we're putting instructional decisions in place to help push that line up to the 56 and beyond. The last priority area, when we saw those 4 different circles on the beginning page of our school report card, is on track to graduation. Ms. Oginski talked about this, indicating our students achieving educational milestones that predict post-secondary readiness. So that's where our ELA 3rd grade scores are weighted twice, our 8th grade math scores are weighted twice, chronic absenteeism, and then our graduation and attendance rate. So when you look at the next, we're at 73.9. And if you go to the next, I broke down the chronic absenteeism. You'll see that we are underneath the statewide, which includes students enrolled for 90 days. They don't have to be continuous. That's a little bit of a discrepancy. They don't have to be continuous. And then labeled chronically absent if they miss more than 10% of the possible attendance days. So we want to really look at our students who are not showing up. We're not showing up for a certain reason. We're struggling to stay at school because that does impact our school report card. More importantly, it impacts our kids. And the next one underneath that is the graduation rate, just so you can see. So that's an average of year 4 and 7 cohorts, because the state takes into account, maybe if you didn't graduate this year, but you might go to summer school and finish up those last credits, it'll count in that next 4-year cohort, so that we're not losing any of those students that maybe aren't on the traditional track. And then it does the 7-year cohort as well. So this state report card is looking at the graduating class of 2022 and 2019. So it takes into account some classes are bigger in attendance and enrollment than other ones. So just to make sure that we're looking at those average of 4- and 7-year cohorts. Graduation, you're right. So our district school report card from last year to this year, we're at 54.4. Remember, that's all encompassing of all that stuff we just talked about. We're at 59.7 expectations this year, so we went up 5.3 points. The next one shows you kind of a trajectory of where we are. Remember 2019, 2020, we did not test, so there's a gap there, but you'll kind of see the report card history for Antigo School District. We are in state ranking out of 420 districts. We are 385 or 386. We are tied with another school district, so when they come up with their final results, we can be one of those two slots, which we know is not number one, so we're not happy with that. But Antigo moved up 28 places from 413 to 385 in Wisconsin placement from last year to the 22-23 school year, which is a great celebration and a way to keep moving. So East Elementary meets expectations. Their state report card went from 60.9 to 69.6 this past year for the 22-23 school year, this report card. So they are meeting expectation. Their report card history has a trajectory along this chart line. North Elementary meets few expectations. They were at 50.1, they're at 54.8. So they're meeting few expectations, and here's their trajectory of their years without that 2019-2020. West Elementary meets few expectations. They were at 43.9, which was fails to meet expectations, and moved to 49.3, which meets few expectations. So a good leap and moving in the right direction, and a lot of work still needing to do, which I know the teachers and educators over at West are putting in that work. And there's kind of the trajectory of their test report card history. Antigo Middle School meets expectations. They went from 68.5 to 67.9. They were our only school to dip down a little, but they still meet expectations. One of those reasons, as we look at trend lines, and we talked about this, is preparing our students with those foundational skills as they move into middle school so that they can then attend to that middle school work. So this is not to say that our middle school staff are not putting in the hard work and doing an exceptional job. We have to prepare them and make our students ready to receive that great education. Here's their graph. Antigo High School meets few expectations. So they were also at 44.9 the previous year, and that's fails to meet. And they're at 53.9, which is a good jump of 9 points, and meets few expectations. So there's always that celebration and the word and. Like, we can celebrate and we make great growth, and now what are we going to do with that to push us further? Here's the report card history for the high school. Here's the report card score this year's report card score based upon, in comparison to all the districts kind of in our area, in CISA, in the surrounding area, just so that we can have an idea of where we fall in Antigo and where we're going to move to in the future years. I linked on the last page the technical report. If you're like really interested on like Friday night looking at all the calculations on how to mathematically figure out every component of the school report card, feel free. It's on there. And then also a link to get to all the report cards if you want to look at all the other school report cards and around the whole state. Everything is public now and not embargoed, so you can go on there and check out any state report card that you would like. Are there any questions?
Amy, I'd like to thank you for explaining the point system where it was 0, half, 1, 1.5. That's never been explained to us.
Yeah, and it's important for even educators to know, because when we get the scores back as teachers, we just see our kids were basic or proficient, but we don't understand that that is a weighted, and that we want our student obviously to be in advance, but it does give us that 1.5 on the state report card that's factored into our achievement score. So that's also another way for us as educators to look at that. And it's also a way to be careful, because you don't want to look at that and miscalculate, because we could have a lot of students be low basic getting zeros, but everyone else advanced getting 1.5, and your growth score and your achievement score is going to look good when really you have an achievement gap problem. So it's just important to know what that looks like, and so as you dive deeper into the data, that you're not making misconceptions about the data, because we have to know where all of our students land. Thank you.
Okay, and next we have the Director of Buildings and Grounds report is attached, and Mr. Leiterman is present if anyone has questions over his report. And then next we have the superintendent report. I am not going to read every single item on there. There was a couple of things I want to touch base on, new things, as well as to give an update on the extensive records request that we have. Our board attorney is working through that still. He is sifting through the emails that he gathered from the district and redacting information that is confidential that can't be shared. And he just said that the process takes a lengthy amount of time, and once it's completed, he will then look to continue gathering the remaining information. Another thing is the new attendance plan that we have been working on at the high school. The directors and I worked at central office trying to devise a strategy, some planning on how we can help support the high school with some students who have problems with staying in class. They were missing class a lot or causing problems within the building. And you can see there's a contract linked. We then met with the building administrators at the high school. We met with parents, shared what was going to be taking place with the students. Part of that was giving up their cell phones, and the directors and I have spent a lot of time in the high school along with administration and staff trying to corral these students who have been struggling, and I have to say it has been pretty successful. It's not flawless, but we have seen students who have gone into this classroom where they're working on just their assignments and they're sort of not out in the general population with students, and they're very eager to rejoin and follow the rules of school and be a successful student. So I do think that it's being successful. It's not flawless by any means, but we are seeing success with that. Another thing is I had asked some people to join us at City Hall and worked with Mayor Brand to communicate with the Sheriff's Department, the Antigo Police Department, Mr. Pierce, our County Board Chair, and Judge Rhodey to discuss how we can work together to support our high school students. And it was a very successful meeting, and we have a follow-up meeting that will be taking place the 1st of December, and we're going to expand that. Danny Pyatt also attended that meeting with me. We did some brainstorming, but again, we have other people that need to be at the table to help us as far as talking about things concerning vaping at the high school and how we can make sure that we are following what the judicial system says that we can do regarding underage students vaping on school property. And then one of the days that I was at the high school, it just so happened I was helping to supervise the hallways, and a group of students caught me and wanted to talk about having a committee to discuss bringing back some traditions for high school graduation, things that seniors typically did that maybe they're not doing anymore. So Mr. Rogers and I, along with this group of students, their advisor, Ms. Wisbrocker, and some parents are going to meet and have these conversations and arrive at some decisions. And we'll be sure and share those out with you as soon as those things are determined. The next big thing is a focus group. We had our first focus group meeting I was very concerned we weren't going to have anyone to show up, and it just so happened we had 4 staff members that showed up, and they were very pleased that we didn't have a large crowd because they didn't want to be recorded. They didn't want to have to talk in front of a large group of people. Our board members, Andy Mary, Dr. Bardo, and Angie Schreiber were all present. And I felt like we really gathered some important information from staff on things that we can do, that we can work toward as a district to provide better opportunities for our staff in order to help retain teachers, which is very important. And below that is a list of dates that we will hold additional focus groups. The next one will be on December 6th. It will be at the Senior Center because this is not limited to only staff, but to the community as well. And I believe that date we have Catherine Solon, Bobby Braun, and Danny Pyatt will be joining me for that one. And then lastly, we will be doing, Danny and I will start doing a board recap in December. after the board meeting, we will join them at the Breakfast Club and do a recap of all the things that happened at the board meeting, and we'll just go over the agenda and the decisions or votes that were made to keep the community better informed with what's happening at our board meetings. Questions?
Oh, this is great information, thank you. I have received feedback from staff members at the high school in appreciation to the admin in assisting with a select group of students. So I wanted to share that positive feedback. So thank you to your admin team. It's been recognized.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, moving along to item number 5. Thank you to all of our directors, administrators for their hard work. Number 5, new business, letter A, RFP, request for proposal. I will be looking for a motion, please.
I move the board to direct administration to finalize the RFP as discussed and to bring it back to the Buildings and Grounds Committee on December 4th, 2023.
Motion's been made by Andy. Would you like to speak to your motion, please?
Just to say that, Jake is trying to move this forward, and this is one of the steps, and towards doing something about a new school or changing our configuration, or it's a good move.
Okay. Any other board members have a question, discussion? Okay, hearing no questions or discussion, the voting device is now open. If you are in favor of the motion on the floor, you vote yes. If you are opposed, vote no. Jake, am I up there this time?
Yes.
Thank you. Would anybody like to change their vote? All right, the vote is now closed, Dustin, and the motion carries. Item number 6, board action, letter number A, consideration to approve second reading, policy number 3130, assignment and transfer. I will be looking for a motion, please.
I move the board to approve the second reading of policy 3130, assignment.
Motion has been made by Jill. Would you like to speak to your motion, please?
Now I'd like to defer to anybody on the policy committee. Is there anything further to share?
Any other questions or comments from a board member? I'm looking toward Bobby as the chairman of that committee.
Nothing further from me.
Okay. Hearing no discussion, the voting device is now open. You are voting either in favor of or against the motion on the floor, which is to approve the second reading of policy 3130, assignment and transfer. Assignment and transfer. Would anybody like to change their vote? Vote is now closed, and the motion carries with all but one in favor of. Letter B, consideration to approve second reading of policy 3120, employment of professional staff. I would be looking for a motion, please.
I move the board to approve the second reading of policy 3120, employment of professional staff.
Motion has been made by Catherine. Would you like to speak to your motion? Would anybody else like to speak to the motion? Bobby from the policy committee? No. Hearing no discussion, the vote is now open for the motion on the floor of the approval of the second reading of policy 3120, employment of professional staff. Would anybody like to change their vote? All right, the vote is now closed, Dustin. And the motion carries with all in favor except one. Item C, consideration to approve first reading of Neola update policies for the board 32-2. I will be looking for a motion.
I move the board approve the first reading of Neola update policies for the board 32-2.
Motion's been made by Bobby. Would you like to speak to your motion?
Just to add that this was quite an extensive review of policies, and several of us were involved with that, if anybody wants to comment specifically.
Anybody at the policy committee like to share what you uncovered? It's huge. It's a big policy change. All right, hearing no discussion, the vote is now open to approve the first reading of Neola update policies for the board 32-2. You may now vote. Would anybody like to change their vote? The vote is now closed. Dustin? And the motion carries with one abstention. Close enough. Letter D, consideration to approve first reading policy 2414, human growth and development. I will be looking for a motion, please.
I move the board to approve the first reading of policy 2414, human growth.
Motion on the floor by Jill. Would you like to speak to your motion?
Yeah, so this was actually brought to Curriculum Instruction Committee in June. And then it went to policy last month. So I spoke in policy, it was discussed in curriculum and instruction as well.
Would anybody else like to speak to the motion on the floor? Hearing no one, the vote is now open for the motion to approve the first reading of policy 2414, human growth and development. You may now vote. Would anybody like to change their vote? The vote is now closed. And the motion carries. First reading. Consideration to approve letter E, first reading policy 8390, animals on district property. I will be looking for a motion, please.
I move the board to approve the first reading of policy 8390, animals on district property.
Motion has been made by Dr. Bardo. Would you like to speak to your motion?
I would. First of all, I want to thank the administration for looking into this policy, because basically what the district was facing was a liability issue. And the changes that are being proposed are to help us have the same policy within the entire district. In addition, I met with Jennifer Cresson, who is the owner of Jenny's House of Dogs. She's an award-winning trainer, and I believe she is the one who has gone into North Elementary over the years. In discussing with her, one of the interesting things that she said to me was that in the code of conduct for the group that gave her her training, she cannot work and have therapy dog on her premises. According to the code of conduct, it's community service. Therefore, she would take off work when she came to North, for example. So in the organization that she is with, you cannot have a therapy dog at your place of work where someone else is paying you. Therefore, I'm going to request that Ms. Oginski contact the person that's the guidance counselor who has the therapy dog, find out the name of the trainer who trained her, the city that it was done in, the name of the organization associated with her therapy, and to check out the code of conduct of said institutional work to find out if it has the same code of conduct as Mrs. Cresson's organization has, because if it is supposed to be community service and not being paid by the school district at the same time the therapy dog is here, it's another issue that needs to be addressed.
Ms. Oginski, did you get those requests?
Then I think we should table this and send it back to policy committee until we have those answers. So I'll move to table this.
All I was going to say, Andy, is that it's the first reading, and if the guidance counselor provides the information prior to the second reading, it should be okay, but I understand your move.
According to Robert's rules, to lay it on the table means that we're going to be taking it up in the same meeting in the business later. Now, if you want to postpone this to another meeting, you can postpone it to another meeting and give a date. So if you want to table it, we're going to have to talk about it at the end of the meeting. If you want to postpone it to another meeting, you can give the meeting date that you'd like to postpone it to.
Thank you. I intended to postpone it then to the next board meeting, and whatever that date is, December 18th.
Okay, in light of postponing, it is amendable. If anybody would like to amend the postponement, which is now the motion on the floor to postpone this item to December the 18th, 2023, would anybody like to amend this motion?
Comment on the motion?
Yes, because it is debatable.
I agree with this is interesting and follow-up. I will also say that I think that there has been extensive time put into this from staff and from our admin team, and my concern is by postponing, it's going to push out the first reading another month yet, and I think there's a lot of passion around this topic. I think there's a lot of value that it provides our district. So as only one board member, I would oppose the current recommendation proposal, just because I don't want to have the first reading pushed back another month yet.
I would agree with that, Joe.
Okay. Would any other board members like to speak to the motion on the floor now, which is the postponement of this item to the December 18th, 2023 board meeting?
So if we read the first reading tonight, and the information is going to be brought up?
Well, right now, we're not dealing with the first reading, we're dealing with the postponement of this entire agenda item to be the first reading in December of 2018, December the 18th, 2023. So that would become the first reading then.
Right, so what I'm asking is, when the information is brought forward, is that going to be to policy committee, or is that going to be at the next board meeting?
According to what Mr. Andy Berry has submitted to the board, this will come back to the board for the 2018, not to the policy committee. So Mrs. Oginski will bring her information to the board on December the 18th, 2023.
Oh.
Correct? Thank you. Does that answer your question, Angie? Thank you. Any other member like to speak to the proposal of postponing this? Dustin, are you ready for, okay. So now the motion on the floor is to postpone this item on the agenda, the first reading of this policy, to the December 18th, 2023 board meeting, and the information that was requested by the board member would be given to the board at that time on December the 18th. If you're in favor of the postponement, you will vote yes. If you are against the postponement, you will vote no. Does everybody understand the question on the floor? Okay, the vote is now open. Would anybody like to change their vote? The vote is now closed, Dustin. We have 6 who are voting in the negative and 1 voting in the affirmative. The proposement fails. The motion on the floor is I move the board approve the first reading of policy 8390, animals on district property. Any further discussion on the motion on the floor? Dr. Bardo?
Since you mentioned that information would be at the next meeting prior to the second reading, so if we can, when the agenda comes out, that we get that information that we get so that we know coming in what the answers are. Thank you.
I'll hold that question. I think Jill, did you have something you wanted to say? Yes, please.
I just was curious on if somebody from the policy committee could share a little feedback. I would be in favor of a passive permission slip. And it seems that having a sign and return permission slip may be another barrier to having therapy dogs in the schools. So I'm just posing a question for clarification on liability or decision-making around passive versus, I don't know, active permission form. The right term would be, but if there's any feedback on that specifically relating to liability.
Pass that off to Mrs. Ajinski.
So the permission form technically really isn't what is being approved because it's part of forms, so those don't go to board approval. But if my memory serves me correctly, I think it was decided to do that permission form just as a way of making sure that people are actually reading it and that they know that we have therapy dogs in the building.
So therapy dogs returning to the buildings, is that contingent on the return of all of these forms?
Well, I think that there would be other methods if we don't have every single form. We were talking about another, I will ask Mrs. Fossbender. There was another something, and maybe Mr. Rogers can even speak to this, that the career fair, I believe. And in order for students to participate in the career fair, they had this very same kind of permission form, which is something that would have benefited every child in that grade, in those grades to participate. So I feel like if we're going to do that for something like a career fair, that having a therapy dog permission form in the same sense would be equally important.
Dr. Bardo? Oh, hold your thought. Bobby, you was next.
Two comments. One, also that the permission slip in the future, then we talked about, and correct me if I'm wrong, that permission slip would go with the back to school packet in the beginning of the year, and so that would alleviate missing a lot of them. And then two, my question for Dave is that the request that you're making, is that language that's within the policy? Or are you asking that to be added? I mean, that would be a general code of conduct going forward?
The point I was trying to make, Bobby, was that Mrs. Crescent stated that in the code of conduct for the organization that gave her license to be have a therapy dog, she cannot work and get paid by an employer, and she is an employer, so when she would go to North, she would take the day off because it's supposed to be giving back to the community. So I'm just trying to get the information that the guidance counselor has to know what was the group that she, and does that have the same language? Because if it is the same language and we're paying her salary, she can't have the therapy.
I understand.
So what I'm trying to force is that she gives information to the district administrator prior to our next meeting.
So then we would be looking at changing the policy.
Right.
Because
But we can change it at the next meeting because it's the second reading. Anybody can amend that policy at the second reading.
Yeah.
then we would have to go back to it.
first reading, or that's still?
Not with an amendment.
So whatever language is coming from the training academy or wherever they get their training from, that language should somehow be reflected in our policy, that we would require those things as well. Am I understanding?
That's what I believe she needs to do, is provide that to our district administrator. So that we know if their organization allows the dog to come in to a school district where we pay her salary.
Okay, so question for the committee then, I'm sorry, but is that handled on an individual basis, or does that need to be added into policy language?
I understand what you're asking there, Bobby, yeah. Hearing what you were asking, I can speak to what you want to do, and not to delay this anymore. What can happen is the policy committee can have this, again, even though we had the first reading, and if it so passes in the first reading, if there's a change for the policy committee in committee before the second reading will still stand, and it would be policy after the second reading. So you can change a policy for the second reading, make a vote on the second reading of it, and it becomes policy. It does not require a third reading of that policy. That's the purpose of two readings, is if you want to change something from the first reading to the second reading. So I agree with what you're saying. I believe somewhere in the policy, this language that Dr. Barlow has presented should be put in that policy for the committee to discuss in December, and then bring it back for the second reading if it passes the first reading of this meeting. Does that make sense?
It does to me.
Yes.
So, just so I understand it correctly,
Mhm.
so we would need to have, if this passes, first reading, it should then be, we should also set up a policy committee meeting to review it, to see if there is any information, so information that we need from that employee should be not prior to the board meeting, but prior to the policy committee.
Correct.
So the policy would then have language to include,
For all.
right, from requirements from the training level, or designation or certification, whatever the organization.
Correct. Jill?
So I'm wondering if, first of all, further information on if there is exemptions or considerations through licensing agencies, because I know other districts do have therapy dogs on site. So I would logically think that there's something that doesn't bar staff from being able to. I also would caution the policy committee that looking at just one licensing agency, and I might have the terms wrong, but if we only look at one and we have, I know we have another therapy dog in a different building that is, I believe, ready to go once that staff member returns to school, and another one in training. So if there's different licensing organizations that have a different code of conduct, I don't know if it would be or not, but I'm just trying to differentiate if we are overstepping within our own policy. Is it the role of the district to know what the code of conduct is of the licensing agency, or is it the role of the district to have a policy specific to what the district would require, and it would be the responsibility of that person, provider, whether it be internal or external, to follow the code of conduct within their licensing agency, if that makes sense. I'm really trying to figure out if we're almost overstepping. I don't think it's intentional. Also shown that other people in the community do have to donate their time in, so that it's getting exposure and interest too in other ways too that we didn't consider and think about. So I think it's an important thing to explore, but I think my feedback more is directed at the upcoming committee meeting for policy. Is really that distinction, making sure that we're not going into an area that is probably not within our role.
Correct. I understand that. Question, was this policy vetted through our attorney before?
That's a Neola policy.
It is a Neola policy, okay?
And then we made some adjustments to ensure that the district would be effective and that there was communication. But it's basically Neola.
Okay. Andy?
Yeah, I would agree with Jill and just say that just because somebody else has a code of conduct, doesn't mean our district's got to abide by that code of conduct. And I think what we really want to think about here is what's best for students.
Exactly.
And, you know, do we want to do some code of conduct just because it's that code of conduct? That licensing agency, if they want to withdraw that person's, whether it's a license or whatever it's called, they can do that. They can say, you're not abiding by our code of conduct. And then that person doesn't have the accreditation that we are requiring some sort of accreditation here. But we're under no obligation to follow somebody else's code of conduct.
Any other discussion on the motion on the floor?
Just after further thought on that, seeing that this is an AOLA policy and agreeing with Andy, then I would trust that Neola has their ducks in a row as far as training requirements and licensing. So are we on an amendment or?
No, the original motion is what's on the floor.
So no further comment.
Any other questions or comments on the motion on the floor? The motion is just to move that the board approve the first reading of policy 8390, animals on district property. Yes, Andy.
Yeah, I just had a question about this paragraph that starts on service animals in schools and elsewhere in the district. And highlighted in green there is the word scheduled. And for the example of this dog that was in school all the time last year, is that an option that it can be scheduled all the time?
Well, if it's scheduled all the time, are you asking, okay, we're just going to schedule you 5 days a week while school doors are open? Is that what the question is? I wouldn't consider that a schedule. In most districts that I have been involved with, there is a particular schedule. And I think that one of the things that JD brought up earlier was the fact that having that schedule is to ensure that the therapy dogs are not impeding on the educational setting and making sure that they're not being placed in the classroom at a time that students, it may be interfering with reading instruction or math instruction. And typically when those things happen, then this therapy dog is scheduled to be on the playground with the students who are permitted to engage with the therapy dog.
Mm-hmm.
Or there are particular times so that we can let families know this is when the therapy dog will be here.
Well, so I guess we have all different scenarios of therapy dogs. I mean, we have at the elementary school, the therapy dog comes in once a month. And here at the high school, and possibly at the middle school, that therapy dog has been there, it's a lot. I can say, maybe somebody has a better number, but I'm going to say 3 weeks a month, every day. And so is that going to be a schedule, or is at the high school, does that word schedule mean
a schedule?
We're going to let you bring it in for 2 days a week for partners or wings.
Correct.
That's more of what the schedule means, or
yeah.
And so here we have the hallways where the dog is in the hallways, perhaps. How's that schedule work for that?
Well, like any other decision that's made, we like to look at data and see what the results are. And right now we don't have any data at all, none. I mean, the whole reason for this coming to the board is because we were following not one single part of this policy. There was no documentation on file. Our parents and students were not informed that we had the therapy dog. So there has to be some structure instead of it just being, we're just gonna have a therapy dog in and out. And I mean, is it a nice to have or a need to have?
I agree with the structure part. I just want to understand what that structure is going to look like.
Can I interrupt? I think Amy had a really good explanation of schedule and documentation. Can she share?
Absolutely. Come to the microphone, please.
You did such a nice job with that at the policy committee.
So I'm just speaking on past experiences with therapy dogs in districts. So at the elementary level, it is very different, like you were saying, Mr. Mary, depending on the level. So at the elementary level, it's a little bit easier to schedule of we're having recess at this time, or we are independent reading, so the dog can come in and read with us during these times, because their schedule's a little bit more structured that way and easier to be flexible. If I know that the dog is coming from 1 to 2, as a teacher, I can say, I'm going to do my math lesson. We're going to be reading when the dog is here, so the dog can come in my classroom. All parents are notified that the dog is coming in that day. Middle school and high school, because they run like either a block schedule or an hourly schedule, what that would look like as an option is that like the dog would come in Monday at 8 o'clock from 8 to 8:30. I'd be running, if I'm a therapy dog and I'm a counselor, I'd be running a group with 4 kids. I don't have to put down which kids, but I run a friendship group from 8 to 8:30, from 8:30 to 9. A student who needs support works in the counseling office. The dog is there from 9 to 9:30. I have another group of students who come in, maybe they're 9th graders and they're working on anxiety and depression, and the dog is really good therapy for those concerns with those students, and the students understand that. They have their waivers or their parent signatures, but that's what the schedule would look like, and maybe the dog would leave at like 11:30 then. But so that's the schedule, so that if I'm the principal, I know, oh, it's 11 o'clock, oh, I know where the dog is. It's, you know, meeting with this group of students who are working on this concern. And it's not just kind of open to interpretation of, I wonder where the dog is, you know, that kind of piece of it. So at different levels, it could look very different, but just a structure and a schedule that there's a purpose for, you know, the therapy dog. And I think we are getting hung up on one, but we have many. And if other people want to bring in therapy dogs, what does that look like? Right? We'll get in the weeds of what does that look like scheduling. When I had that as a principal, I would just make sure that like Monday, Wednesday, this community member would bring in their therapy dog that was approved by the district. I would make sure there was a schedule. On Fridays, a different dog would come to our recess. The kids would be all excited. The dog was coming that day. But then there was always, even if we had multiple therapy dogs coming in, I made sure as a principal that I had a schedule, that everyone knew where the dog would be. I also had a staff member who was definitely afraid and had been bitten by a dog. She also knew where not to go then, because the dog was in certain places, certain classrooms, and she could avoid that as well. So it helped everyone involved and helped the students and families to know when the dog would be there, and helped me as a principal know when and where the dog was in my building. Just like I would do with any visitor. I always made sure as a principal I knew who was in my building, where they would be. They had a schedule. They couldn't just volunteer and like wander around. They had a schedule of what they were coming for and a purpose. I knew exactly where they were in case of a fire drill or some emergency. I knew we had an extra person in the building. So same kind of thing, just that there's a purpose and a plan. And that we did start working on Infinite Campus, which is our going to be our online enrollment. And we already worked on one of the forms so that the students and families will be able to mark yes or no for the therapy dog before moving on to the enrollment process. So that's already in place. So it's like that's going to be coming for enrollment for next year, which is great. But in the meantime, how do we move from this point to the end of the year to make sure students get what they need?
And as she said, that's a forced, so they can't progress through the enrollment process until they have completed the permission form for the therapy dog.
So that term schedule that Andy is asking would follow something similar to what Andy is describing.
And as a principal, a building principal, I would not let a person, a therapy dog, or anyone come in my building unless I knew exactly what that schedule looked like. I communicated that with staff. I communicated with I made Thursday videos for families. They would know the next week, here's when the dog's coming in, so that everyone was informed. And then if somebody said we didn't know, I had documentation of here's where you were informed, You know, it was on the video, it was in the newsletter, and the staff do as well.
Any other questions about the motion on the floor? Okay, hearing no questions, the vote is now open to approve the first reading of policy 8390, animals on district property. You may now vote. Would anybody like to change their vote? Okay, the vote is now closed. Dustin. And the motion carries. Moving on to item F, consideration to approve first reading policy number 0167.3, public participation at board meetings. I will be looking for a motion, please. Asking a second time, I will be looking for a motion of item F.
I move the board to approve the first reading of policy 0167.3, public participation at board meetings.
Motion has been made by Jill. Would you like to speak to your motion?
Yes, but I would prefer to first defer to the policy committee. I just think that's appropriate to do. I'm not a part of the policy committee, nor was I present for that. So.
Okay, then we will look to the chair, Bobby, for that.
So several items were brought up regarding public comment at board meetings. You can see the changes that are proposed in green. A couple grammatical things that I would add. Space between letters C and D in the green, and also that letter C read just as it is, only shall not be permitted at the end of that sentence. Letter D.
Wait 1 second, Bobby. I just want to make sure that Michelle is catching this so we can make these corrections known as we vote. So on letter C, behind citizens, you say shall not be permitted instead of made. So strike made.
Space will be done by law. That's
Letter D, participant to be a legal resident or property owner within the Unified School District of Antigo. I would suggest omitting that.
Striking letter D is what Bobby is asking for as a change.
And one very good point made was that an open enrollment parent, that would prevent a parent of an open enrolled student from speaking at public comment.
or teacher, staff member that isn't.
Correct.
Yeah.
That's
excellent.
Okay, so now what we're doing, we're actually changing the motion that's before us. So this is amending this policy with what you're asking. Are there any other amendments that you would like to present to the board on this policy? The two that you've given are amendments. One more? Okay, go ahead.
Letter F, to remain at 5 minutes duration
Okay.
for participant. That's my amendment.
Bobby, when we were at committee, I thought we mentioned that during public comment, that we need to address items that were on the agenda. Now, in order, if somebody wants to speak to something other than that, they can contact the superintendent. 7 days, I think
We
it's
did
7 days.
discuss that if they've signed up for public comment, it should be an agenda item.
If they want something on the agenda, they can contact,
Isn't that in
yeah, superintendent, so 7 days. Is at the top. Okay. So we wouldn't be limiting like freedom of speech or anything like that, but we would just be requesting that it's actually on the agenda then, so that it can be discussed.
Is there any other additions to the amendment that you would like to make on the policy?
So I will backtrack. My mistake, Angie, because I thought that was under agenda item. That needs to be added as well.
So you're asking to amend and add item D under agenda item? And your item D is?
The topic be an agenda item.
Topics.
Could you just C to topic, agenda topic to be addressed? Do you add agenda?
You can add agenda in front of topic on letter C, and that would suffice, yes?
That only an agenda topic be addressed.
Yes.
Yes.
Only an agenda topic. Okay. Michelle, did you catch those amendments that Bobby is asking?
So for under agenda item, are we just changing C?
We're adding to the front of C,
Yep.
only
Agenda
an
topic.
agenda topic. Is that what you said, Bobby?
Only an agenda topic to be addressed.
Okay. The next thing that she is asking is under letter C, that after B, instead of made, to strike made and put, what's
Shall
the
not be
word?
permitted.
Permitted. Shall not be permitted.
You want to omit D?
And omit letter D completely. And then on letter F, keep the 5 minutes duration.
Further down would be letter L.
Letter L.
To remain at 60.
And letter L to remain at 60 minutes unless extended by a vote of the board. Okay, that is the amendment to the motion. So we need first a vote on the amendment that Bobby is asking. Does anybody need clarification on what that amendment is? No? Okay,
No. I want to make an amendment to the amendment.
First, we gotta deal with the amendment, and then you can amend it again.
okay.
And we're gonna discuss this amendment.
This amendment that's on the floor. I've asked for any other questions twice on the amendment on the floor. Do you want to discuss it?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead. Now's your
And
time.
it's just, I think we had a good example here tonight from Mr. Holmes, who came in and he talked about two things, and when he was done, I thought, yes, we should talk about that as a board. Those things that he brought up. But we're just making him jump through hoops. If he's gotta try and get those on the agenda before we can talk. And, you know, there's certainly, I think he had two good points. We've certainly had speakers come, they don't have good points. And so, I don't know that we want that stuff on the agenda. And it's just listening to people, you know, we're just listening to people. And it would be nice, you know, on the one hand, yes, it'd be nice if they were agenda items, they would come and speak. We'd take them up that meeting, but I don't think it should be a requirement.
So, like you said, that was great, like, you know, this information that Jason brought forward. But like, if that would have been on the agenda, then we could have discussed it tonight versus waiting a whole nother month and then discussing it. So I think it would be more efficient use of our time, I guess.
Yes, but the reason I think we should be doing it the other way around is, you know, we listen to them. If any of us or the board president say to Glenda, well, that was my point. Let's talk about that at a meeting. It gives administration time to prepare something for that, to research what other districts are doing, what it would really mean to our district. But if we bring it up and right at the meeting, they're not going to have time to do that. They're just going to end up putting it off for another meeting anyhow.
So you're saying that if they got the request a week before the board meeting, that they wouldn't have enough time to bring it up, just have it start a discussion?
Well, I don't think they would necessarily understand what the person was gonna be talking about, you know. I guess you're saying, oh, I want the person to go ahead and talk to the administration about what they're wanting to present at the board meeting, is what you would be saying.
Yeah, because like, I think in public comment, there's been numerous times that information has been brought to us that we didn't know, and we can't respond to them, and nothing comes up because we can't respond.
What,
So I think if it was
we,
on the
we
agenda.
can't respond, but it doesn't mean we can't say, that was a good point, I want that on the agenda. You know, the committee agenda, where it should really be going, shouldn't be going at a board meeting. So,
Okay, yeah, that's fair.
I completely agree with what Andy's thinking on this, but here's my however. Our administrator has developed these focus groups also that maybe Jason or whomever would bring this information in these focus groups as well. That's another avenue that we've not had in the past. So I honestly can see where you're coming from, Andy, and I see that because I made some notes that she and I are going to have a conversation about what you brought up tonight in the very near future to have a discussion here on the board level about those ideas because I think they're great. And we have had lots of people that's come through and stood there and given us great ideas over the years. But,
and, you know, in the focus group, I thought the focus group was great. It was a good example of, I mean, there were some people that they straight out said, I'm not coming to a board meeting and talking. And I'm glad there's not more than 5 of us here tonight.
yeah.
And I'm glad that the whole 9-member board isn't here because that's too many people to be talking to. And so that's a great avenue, but whatever avenue people want to use, we should be listening.
Given other options.
Curiosity question, Andy, I know that that was part of our policy. Prior, I don't know when it changed, but I know you.
It would change when I was president.
Yes, that you were on the board, yes. So I'm just curious if you've had feedback when that was within the policy of it being a barrier.
Yes. I mean, that's part of the reason it changed.
I believe that was, Andy, the main reason it changed is to get the ideas from people because that was, at that time, the only avenue of getting information from the public or from staff. Where now we're creating another place too.
We're
that I
creating,
can see
yes.
the more the merrier, so to speak, of getting information from the community. No pun intended.
I can go back and forth on this for my own self. I can argue it both ways. I received a lot of feedback of people asking that wasn't even on the agenda, so I'm very confused as to where this came from, and it causes confusion from families or community members, which was a perspective that I hadn't thought of. So there's that component. One thing that I really value and like to encourage is ensuring that there's a proper chain of command, because I do think that in my experience on the board and in watching board meetings in the past, there's not always the chain of command being followed, so things are being brought to the board. And transparency isn't the thing, it's the chain of command of allowing opportunity, because maybe something can be resolved very easily, or a misunderstanding, or great ideas that can be followed up on, that can be done and resolved. So I think that's something that I just, as just one board member, would like to see, that the chain of command is followed to give the district an opportunity to directly respond and engage with that individual, because that would allow engagement back and forth.
Okay, any other discussion of the amendment that is on the floor?
Yes, I will also speak to striking out legal resident property owner. I appreciate an email that we received and also public comment tonight about the limitations of that. So I do agree with that. This is another one, again, that I struggle with, because I've actually had a considerable number of people asking, don't you have to be a resident to speak, or a property owner? Because the concern is, as a resident or property owner in taxes going to the district, and is the board's role of student achievement and concerns that there are distractions that then place the focus away from achievement to other things, and that's not discrediting that those other topics aren't relevant. But I will share, and I think it's my ethical duty to do so, that that very concern of being a legal resident or a property owner has been brought to me by several. So that's just my feedback on that. And again, I don't want to limit, especially staff or parents, guardians. So that would be a concern. I don't know that I don't know where I stand on D. I'll just say that because I don't, it limits right now, it's too limiting. But I think there's some validity in those concerns or feedback that were shared too.
Any other questions on the amendment that's on the floor? Dustin, are you ready? Okay, so you are voting either in favor of the amendment that was presented by Bobby, or you are voting against that amendment that was presented by Bobby. I understand the vote. The voting is now open. Would anybody like to change their vote? Okay, the vote is now closed. We have all in favor of the amendment except for one, so the amendment passes. Dr. Bardo, you would like to offer an additional amendment, and might I add, board members, remember that we learned from our board attorney we can only have 2 amendments per motion, so this is the final amendment that can be offered to this motion.
I believe at the policy committee, there was concern that I reduced the 60 minutes to 15, and then in Bobby's amendment, it went back to 60. I'm proposing that we do it at 30 minutes.
Okay, so the amendment now on the floor is on item letter L, under public comment section of the meeting, to limit the speech to total into 30 minutes, unless extended by a vote of the board. 30 minutes. Dr. Bardo, you want to add more to your amendment?
Well, this was, the administration looked at other policies from other schools around us, and 15 tended to be the number that was out there. I know of only 2 occasions since I've been on the board. One was when we were talking about masks, and we had all kinds of people there. Once was back in August, and again, we allowed everybody to speak. And so I'm just for having it at 30 minutes. That gives 6 people their opportunities to speak. And, you know, since August, I don't think we've gone over 6. Maybe we did once. However, in both cases, the board voted to allow anybody who wanted to talk. So I'm just moving it down to 30, because I think that's an appropriate number.
Would any board member like to speak to the amendment? And you're only speaking to the 30 minutes. Yes, Andy.
Yeah, I would, as long as we're leaving the per person time at 5 minutes, I would leave it at 60 minutes, because as Dr. Bardo said, this has only happened twice. I sincerely hope COVID's not coming back again, and I hope we don't change administration for another 5 or 10 years. And, you know, to stop at the 7th person and say, oh, we got to vote on this, doesn't seem necessary. Let's just let it go to 60 and do it. I mean, people, if it's something that they're really passionate about, they want to speak to us, and let's let them.
Okay. Would any other member like to speak to the amendment on the floor for 30 minutes under item L?
I appreciate seeking a compromise with this, Dr. Bardo. I also will share too, I meant to earlier, I did a lot of digging on I primarily focus on our CISA schools. And I know we're our own district. I think it's helpful to just use that as references, but 15 minutes is not uncommon. I know that being a priority, and this is separate from the direct amendment, but I think it's important to just share that a lot of these were, I'm guessing, taken and brought to the committee based on policies of other districts that also help to not restrict, not with the intent to restrict communication from the public, but to also make sure that we're staying consistent with what our agenda items are within the role of board members and meeting in the middle. I have always been pretty firm that I don't like to reduce the amount of time that the community can address the board, so I would be in favor of keeping it at the 60, especially given that the individual speaker would still be at 5 minutes. So I feel like if it were 30 total with 3 individual, that might make a little bit more sense. I don't know, but I appreciate the motion, and I am negative.
Okay, would any other board member like to speak to the amendment on the floor of 30 minutes? Hearing none, Dustin, are you ready for a vote? Okay, the voting devices is now, the voting machine is now open. You're in favor of the 30 minutes, yes. If you are negative, it would be. Would anybody like to change their vote? All right, the vote is now closed. We have 2 that are in favor, and the rest are opposed, and that amendment fails. Now we're back to the main motion on the floor. The main motion on the floor is that we, hold on, that we are approving the first reading of policy 0167.3, public participation at board meetings, with the amendment that was passed previously. Any other discussion now on the whole entire measure?
I just have a concern that if we require people to contact the superintendent and say, I want this on the agenda because I want to speak on this topic, that's going to be hard for people to adapt to, because we haven't done that for a while. And so if we were to do this, I would say we'd have to have some several month leniency policy there, where you add to your speech that in the future you got to
Well, I think
the agenda.
Should this pass the first and second reading the way that it is at that second reading, it would be our responsibility to start educating, no pun intended, the community. And because we can't change our policy, nowhere does it state that we're going to give a leniency grace period of 3 months. That would just be our responsibility whenever they sign up. If they're not addressing an item on the agenda, their name would be looked over. They would not be able to speak. And again, in this that I read, it would say that if you're not speaking to an item on the agenda, then your name will not be read. So it would be, I agree, it's going to be a learning curve.
That's something that should be put on the sign-up sheet.
Yes, it used to be.
It's a little late, yeah.
Well, I know, but like then it'll take some time.
Prior to, whenever you could only speak on the agenda items, topics, it was up at the top. Any other comments? Okay, hearing none, the vote is now open for the approval of the first reading of policy 0167.3, public participation at board meetings, with that amendment that was passed. You're in favor of? Yes. Would anybody like to change their vote? All right, the vote is now closed. The motion is passed with 1 in the negative. Item G, consideration to approve school safety drills. I will be looking for a motion.
I move the board approve the school safety drills as presented.
Motion has been made by Catherine. Would you like to speak to your motion? Would any board member like to speak to the motion on the floor? Seeing no board member move, the voting device is now open. If you're in favor of approving the school safety drills as presented. Would anybody like to change their votes? The vote is now closed and the motion passes. Item letter H, consideration to approve task force update. I will be looking for a motion, please.
Move the board to give authorization for administration to start soliciting volunteers for the next task force ad hoc committee.
Motion has been made by Dr. Bardo. Would you like to speak to your motion?
Well, the first task force is over. They gave their ideas to the board. The board accepted them, and now we need to move forward at some point with a new task force to look at what we're going to do with our buildings and possibly go to referendum.
Would any board member like to speak to the motion on the floor? Seeing no board member move, the voting device is now open. If you're in favor of giving authorization to the administration to start soliciting volunteers for the next task force ad hoc committee, vote. Would anybody like to change their vote? The vote is now closed, and that motion carries. Letter I, report of donations. I'm looking for a motion, please.
I move the board to approve the following donations: $20 from the Green Hen for North Elementary, $50 from various donations for East Elementary Book Blast, $400 from Antigo Club for AHS Woodshop, $3,500 from Quinlan's Equipment to pay for Corvette for Auto Tech, $500 from of course for AHS Fire Trip, $1,000 from Richard Bellington for Aquatic Center, and 15 cases of water from Northern Chill for the career fair for a total of $5,470.
Motion has been made by Jill. Would you like to speak to your motion?
Yes, I would like to thank the donors for their financial contributions to our district, as well as things like the cases of water. It's very much appreciated.
Would any other board member like to speak to the motion on the floor? Hearing none, voting device is now open. In favor of receiving this motion? Would anybody like to change their vote? The vote is now closed, and the motion carries. Thank you so much for all of the donations that have come in. Item number 7, closed session. We have 2 closed sessions. Letter A is consideration of a motion to adjourn into closed session pursuant to section 19.851 of the Wisconsin statutes for the purpose of considering letter E, deliberating or negotiating the purchasing of public properties, the investing of public funds, or conducting other specified public business wherever competitive or bargaining reasons require a closed session. And letter B, consideration of a motion to adjourn into closed session pursuant to section 19.851 of the Wisconsin statutes for the purpose of considering C, employment, promotion, compensation, or performance evaluation data of any public employee over which the governmental body has jurisdiction or exercises responsibility. Looking for a motion. So moved. Motion's been made. Almost called you Dr. Mary. Would you like to speak to your motion? No. Okay, with this motion going to closed session, it requires a roll call vote. Please, Michelle.
Ivy Braun? Yes. Jill Nelson?
Yes.
Andy Mary?
Yes.
Angie Schreiber?
Yes.
Catherine Solon?
Yes.
Dr. Dave Bardo?
Yes.
Danny Pye?
Yes, we are now in closed session. Let's take a break. Start.